Hi everyone, I hope you're well. So I'm really excited today. I'm heading out to meet Sam, who's a co-founder of Genteel. It's a menswear fashion brand, really bold, really incredible, and they are doing some amazing things. So I just want to find out more about his background, how he got into business, how he raised capital for his business, if he has any investors on board, and how he did that. So yeah, we're off to Meta, which is a space where he, goes to think, to do his sketches and all this beautiful things. So we're on the way there right now. Well, so we've just arrived at Meta. It is a chilly morning, but I'm beginning to see like the sky is getting little patches of blue, so it's going to be a beautiful day. See you in a moment. So we're at Meta. So I'm really excited to meet Sam Omindo. He's the co-founder and creative director of Genteel Fashions, and he's here working on his sketches and amazing things. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, welcome.
Thank you. What's going on here?
I'm basically in the conceptual phase of coming up with a new collection, which is inspired by the plumage of a peacock.
And this is beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around how it would probably look like, coming up with a couple of sketches, trying to see how the individual sections would be on a cloth. Yeah.
So would it be a coat? Would it be pants? Would it be a suit?
I'm thinking about it more as a whole range of pieces. So because one of the identifying marks of Genteel is that we use bold prints in the pieces that we make in subtle ways. So as you can see in my blazer, there's a bold print on the inner lining. So this is probably one of the ways that we will use the print in a blazer. And then we can have shirts, we can have shorts, we can even have printed boxers, which is some of the things we're looking at doing.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go have a chat?
Yeah.
Interesting story, like IT student turned entrepreneur. How did that happen?
When I finished high school, there's that phase where you really don't know what exactly you want to do. And I felt that doing IT would give me a much wider net to work with as I tried to figure out what exactly I wanted to do with my career or my life going forward. Yeah. So IT was a natural choice. Yeah.
And how did the transition happen from a hobby into a full-time business?
Well, to start with, my background is I grew up in Eastlands. So the closest place where I could get decent clothing was Gikomba. So I used to go and thrift a lot. So I had interacted with fashion, but on a very hobby-like basis. So around this time, I got the opportunity to also travel to Istanbul, where I consider Istanbul as a fashion capital in itself, probably the fifth, because the textile industry, the manufacturing industry is so robust. So I was exposed to this whole culture of fashion, and thinking about back home, I was like, wow, why aren't we doing anything similar to this? And so when I came back, it was during my second or third year in uni, and I was like, why can't I consider doing this as a full-time thing? And it's at that point that I actually started thinking about how I can convert fashion into a business. And so I began looking around, trying to see if I can get tailors. And one thing that came up pretty quickly was that there are very few menswear brands. So focusing on menswear became a natural instinct plus I'm a man, so it would be easier for me to be able to relate with what men want. Then I did some research about, where did suits come from? Where did pants come from? Where did menswear generally start? And this research took me to two tailoring houses in the UK known as Henry Poole and Gibbs and Hawkes. So these guys have been tailoring for more than 200 years. In fact, the basic structure of the suit is essentially British. So trying to understand the silhouette, trying to understand this whole, and wrapping my head around this, I got further intrigued. So I stopped thrifting and scaled down on importation of pieces that I would get from Turkey. Then I decided to focus in how can I manufacture locally, because I saw there's a need, and there are very few brands that actually you can say are Kenyan and are making stuff locally.
How are you able to raise capital? When we speak to young people, one of the first questions they ask is, how do you find an investor? How do you find investment? How did you work through that?
I'd say the whole transition began most likely a year after, because like I'd mentioned, I was doing this mostly as a hobby. So at the point when I finished school, I joined IB's incubator, which sort of helped me to do research around fashion and trying to see how can we convert this into a business. I had, my dad gave me a small loan, which is what I'd initially used to thrift clothes, and then some of the proceeds that I had received from importing pieces from Turkey is what I channeled into the business. At this point in time, it was pretty amorphous because I also didn't know what exactly I was doing. I just threw myself out there. And then a year after, so there around 2017 to 2018 is when I got my first investor. He put in around $7,000 to help us to just see how we can make this a more professional outfit. And it is at that point that I actually realized that, wow, okay, this is actually serious, and now I need to roll up my sleeves. At that point is when now we started looking at how can we get a workshop in place, can we get a team together, where do we get our fabrics from, and then thinking through the creative ethos of the brand.
Mm-hmm. On your website, the word cultural really stands out, and just looking at some of the designs you have, very bold, very, very strong patterns. How do you use that to differentiate your brand from others in the market today?
When I was starting my brand, the first thing I noticed was that there's a sense of monotony as far as menswear is concerned, even locally. And bearing in mind that majority of the things that are imported to Kenya are made for Caucasian body types. So one thing I noticed was that whenever I would import stuff, either the shoulders were too big or the hips were too small. So they wouldn't fit guys here. And to add on to that, I was like, why is it that only the navies and the grays are what we consider as constant staples in fashion? So I had to think through the process of creating a brand that is unique and different. And my research basically took me into trying to understand who are we as Kenyans. And I zeroed in on a couple of communities, and one of them was the Samburu. And I mean, if you look at images and articles written about our forefathers, you will appreciate that they were very flamboyant. You could spot a chief from a kilometer away, if not from the dangling feathers on his head, could be from his highly embellished beads. It could be from the red ochre on their cloth or on their hair. So you could literally spot that, yeah, that is a Samburu, or that is a Maasai, or that is a Mijikenda. However, over time, as a result of assimilation of British culture, we lost some of this sense of identity, and it got meshed up into the navies and the grays. So I determined at that point that one of the ways I would like to make myself unique is by bringing back cultural identity. Now, here's the thing. Men are very peculiar. It is very difficult to have a man put on a red suit to work. So I was like, how can I bring in this sense of character in a cloth in a way that he'd wear something to work, but he knows that there's a cultural identity with that. So a whole idea of having a bold inner lining in the suits that we make came into being, and we found that was a starting point towards this long journey of trying to help men re-identify with their rich cultural heritage. And we are slowly getting to the point where now we are studying this beautiful community called the Samburu. We are looking to travel to Narasha village in Samburu, be with the community for a period of a week, try to absorb their culture, and then come up with a unique print that we can say, oh yeah, this print is actually inspired by the Samburu.
So a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs now have had to retweak, re-strategize because, Corona happened. How has 2020 been like for you?
So we had to sort of pivot and shift a bit. So we partnered with a brand called Vintara, where we were making 3-ply reusable protective masks. And I must admit that we received a lot of support and help from the British Council and Meta and through the Creative DNA program, which basically helped us to craft this whole narrative behind the masks that we're doing. And then over time, British Council looked into what we were doing. So we had a talk show just highlighting the qualities of the masks, the traction that we've had. And it was pretty good because, we had the British High Commissioner wear some of our masks. We had Amina Mohammed, ambassador, wearing our masks.
So what can we expect next from Genteel? What's your future looking like?
I think going forward for me, really looking forward to doing the cultural quest. It's a project I've been thinking about and I've been planning, and it's been ongoing for a month because we've been doing preliminary research, but I'm really looking forward to travel to this community just to be with them and come up with this whole print. Going forward as well, we're looking to increase our distributorship. We've exported some of our stuff to places like the US, Seychelles, and the UK, but we want to see if we can leverage on tech so that we can have a much more broader audience. At some point in February next year, hopefully we would look to go to London Fashion Week by support of the British Council, and basically just helping men or Kenyan men re-identify with their rich cultural heritage and feel proud of the pieces that we'll be making and of what the brand stands for. Yeah.
So as we wind up, what advice would you have for people who are keen on getting into business?
I think I'd like to separate that statement into two. First, there's business and then there's entrepreneurship. I think that they're two very different things. Business is largely easy because you're replicating a business model that someone has already done. So it's just a science. You just need to make sure that the right things are in place. But entrepreneurship is a completely different thing. For me, I consider myself an entrepreneur because if I were to just ask you how many Kenyan fashion brands you know, you'd probably not be able to feel them in one palm, which means that we are charting out a path that's not been done. It's a bit difficult, it requires more resources, you require to psych yourself up every day, even when you don't feel like. So just appreciating the journey and the process as you're trying to build up a fashion brand is one of the things I'd encourage anyone. And also just rolling with the punches. You will make mistakes, you will fail, your expectations will have to be postponed. Just accepting that that is part of the process and basically pushing through.
So we're leaving Meta. We're all set to go to the workshop, which is in Kibra. He's working with some tailors from the local community there. And I can't wait to see how it looks. Well, and that's it for Biashara Talk today. It's been an incredible conversation with Sam Omindo of Genteel Fashions. Young guy, you know, such an inspiring story, and this is exactly why I love sharing stories of African entrepreneurs. Remember, follow Genteel_Kenya as well on Instagram. And remember to subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Instagram as well at Terianchebed and on Twitter at Terianchebed. And let's keep talking business.